Looking good, Italian Job.
Feeling good, Tommy boy. How are you, brother?
Man, in typical Tommy Boy fashion, if I was any better, I'd be twins. It is 78 degrees in Greensboro on 4/21, Thursday the 23rd. And, I'm coming off, 2-3 days ago, it was like in the 20s here in Greensboro. I've got a cleft palate, live with it all my life. And so like right now, my sinuses do not like me. I have a splitting headache that you could park a Buick inside. In fact, I think I may have pieces of a Buick inside me right now. But, that's just me complaining. If I'm not complaining, I will tell you, how lucky are we? Like, here we are. My feet hit the ground this morning. I stood up. I'm vertical.
Right.
I'm north of topsoil. So I'm fine, man. How the heck are you?
Outside the great pollinating that is the seasons, constantly, you can't keep a car clean, and that's okay. I get to do something pretty cool this weekend. This will be the seventh year I've done the Palmetto 200 race, which for the guys who don't live in the Southeast, it's a 210-mile relay from Columbia, South Carolina to Charleston, South Carolina. And you split it in relay style. You'll run a few miles here and there, hand it off to the next guy. I was slated to be the driver this year. And, you know what happens? Tommy boy, what happens every time there's a relay race 2 days before the relay race?
6 or more guys drop out.
Well, guess what? I am now a runner. I have my legs assigned, and so now I have to switch my hydration to more of a water-based hydration. And but outside of that, we got that going for us. But there's some other cool stuff going on this weekend in the D.C. area, and I see you're rocking a Grow Ruck patch on that hat. So tell us what's going on in the D.C. locale today or later this weekend.
If anybody is listening right now in the GT or in the DC area, GTE Grow Ruck Training Exercise is happening, aka the Capitol. If you are participating in that exercise and you are hearing this at the hour this drops, which is 0900 Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, shame on you because you are missing Grow School. Or shame on the leaders because Grow School has now started late. Hashtag I'm looking at you, Bono. Which means Grow School is not starting late. So the King Builder has ended. Grow School has begun. Anybody else who hears the sound of my voice, tune in on the F3 Nation Facebook and the F3 Nation Instagram and follow what happens next because it's going to be pretty amazing. And then go ahead and jump on growruck.com and sign up for the next one because it will change your life. You will not leave the man that you showed up at those events, and that's by design. And you will come away having experienced something that you cannot share with anybody else that was not there. Not because it's secretive, but because nobody else will understand the hell you went through to create the salvation that is the rest of your life. And I don't even mean that from a spiritual / religious standpoint. I mean, you will be a different man Sunday afternoon for the rest of your life.
That's true.
So there's my pitch. I'm not even on the Grow Ruck marketing campaign, but that's the best way I can share it. And if you need further proof, Italian Job and I spent less than 3 days together. And if he called me right now and said, "Hey man, I need you to lie down in traffic for me," I would put myself in the brightest of yellow jumpsuits to play human speed bump for the guy. And that's because of the experience that is Grow Ruck. So if you haven't signed up and it's near you, talk to your family. If you have one to talk to, if you don't, lean into your F3 family and say, "I'm signing up. Who's coming with me? I need your support," and get it done.
I dig it. You said you do anything. What are you doing this weekend? Because I might need a runner.
No, apparently you need a driver now. So I'm going to be driving for your Palmetto team.
So today we're going to be talking about a lot of the backbone behind our Grow Ruck training event. It's the Q source documentation. What works in certain regions, what organically has grown, what works in something that you might want to try. So let's go ahead and introduce our guys. And I'm going to start in our typical fashion, the way it's laid out on my screen. I'll start with Dilly Dilly. we'll do our pitch, man. You know, how long you've been doing F3? How'd you get the name? I know you're a returning guest, so some guys may recognize your voice. And then toss it over to Gopher so we can do the same thing. So Dilly Dilly, the mic is yours. Tell us a little bit about your F3 story.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it, Tommy Boy. Thanks for having us on today. Certainly honored. And I tell you what, Tommy Boy, you got me fired up to kick this thing off, talking about GTE, because I could not agree with you more. I've had the opportunity to do 3 now. We just hosted one this past year in our home region. And so, you know, my experience from going to other 2 regions and then having our own and like getting that fire in our local region, like telling guys why they had to do this, and then seeing so many people from our region doing it, and the fire that it lit and where we've grown, which is one of the things that came out of that is what we're going to talk about today. I could not recommend it anymore that men take the opportunity to do the GTE, because it will absolutely change your life. You know, something about that shared suffering is just, it's amazing. But I'll get off my soapbox there before we get into this. But yeah, so Ryan Tohill, 44, Dilly Dilly, been doing F3 now for 3.5 years. Actually started as a part of F3 Naperville, and then about a year into F3 Naperville, had the opportunity to split. And, you know, in that starfish model, a little plug for Dark Helmet there. If you didn't listen to his podcast this week with the author of the starfish, check it out. But yeah, so split from there. You know, I got my name because I work for Molson Coors. Our biggest brands are Miller Lite and Coors Light. And there's a little brewery down in St. Louis that's our biggest competitor that their tagline is back in the day was Dilly Dilly. And I think many of you know Urkel. And during my opening speech or whatever, my F&G ceremony, I didn't even get my Miller out of my mouth, and he was yelling Dilly Dilly. And so the rest was history from there.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Gopher. You got to top that, man. That's a pretty solid origin story. Tell us yours.
Yeah, so mine's probably, it's definitely not as funny as Dilly's. It's actually pretty plain, but so Aaron Miner, 44, Gopher, and I've been with F3, it'll be 3 years in June. So I started during COVID, so technically still part of Naperville. So my first workout was in a garage with my best buddy, Den Mother. He's the one who EH'd me, and that was actually his VQ that he had. So I thought I was in shape, right? I've heard that, you know, people say this on your podcast. I thought I was in shape. I was running. I will never listen to Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins. The same. He had us doing 3 burpees every single minute when we heard Danger Zone. So to this day, I have to do 3 burpees every single time I hear that song. But no, it's been great. Dilly's dialing it up. It's been a great 3 years. Currently part of the shared leadership team as the culture Q for F3 Plainfield.
I love it. And I too, like you, it's like Thunderstruck, Danger Zone. Like I'll have to stop on I-40 and jump out in traffic and do burpees. So I get it. I get it. I want to underline something because I want to then set the table for today's conversation. First and foremost, you said 3 years. Secondly, you said during COVID. The greatest thing that happened to COVID was F3, in my humble opinion. I saw so much growth and so much creativity, and then the combination of both of those two things during those times throughout F3. And how lucky are we that we had the platform to talk about that? So today, we are tuning back into the bandwidth that we know as Q source. And before you change that dial, dated reference, know that this is something brand new about Q source, and so brand new that it's less than 3 years old. And that's why I'm thrilled about it. When I was in high school, I had those friends who would pitch bands to me ad nauseum, so much so that I never wanted to listen to that band. One of them was the Eagles when I was in middle school. The other was Pink Floyd, being early high school. And so much so that I cannot stand when either of those bands come on the radio or are mentioned. I tip my cap, my Grow Ruck themed cap, to their creativity and longevity. I cannot stand either of those bands. So today's conversation is the guy that hears the word Q source and says, son of a gun, if I have to hear the word Q source one more time, I'm out. I'm out. Well, fellas, you're going to hear it one more time, but I don't want you to be out. I want you to hear it because with our exponential growth across F3 Nation, and let's be honest, F3 Planet, Q Source is front and center this year. 2023 Q Source started at day one. And a lot of guys have a misconception of what that means. So let's reset the dialogue and talk about what Q Source is about, what it can become, and how it will change your region. And that takes me back to today's conversation with Dilly Dilly and Gopher, because they found a way to integrate Q Source as the way it was, I would say, intended. Dread, if you're listening, correct me if I'm wrong, to allow men to be free to lead, and then to dive deep into what lead actually means. So that all being said, I hope I set a decent table for you men. Dilly, I'm going to start with you because you have, like IJ said, been on here before to open up the conversation, and then Gopher take the ball whenever Dilly Dilly is willing to pass it.
Sure.
And tell us about you as a 3-year, ish guy, of how it has affected you, and then we'll go from there. So it's all a conversation. Dilly, take it away, man.
Yeah, no, thanks for the setup there, Tommy boy. And I couldn't agree more, because I was, 3.5 years in, I was, if you're out there listening right now, and you're that guy who's saying, oh gosh, here we go, Q Source again, right? I was that guy early on in my F3 career too, right? I mean, I had joined for the fitness piece of it. And, guys were like, hey, come to Q Source, read this book, read this chapter and come talk about it. I'm like, man, I'm just here to get a workout in. Like, I don't know what you're trying, like, it's like drinking the Kool-Aid type conversation, right? I'm like, I'm not into that. And then somehow sneakily someone got me to a second F cafeteria, and it happened to be a Q Source, and they started talking about it. And I'm like, that's like a cool leadership principle I didn't know anything about, right? And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll come back next week and I'll actually read the chapter this time, and show back up the next week. And I'm like, oh, hey, that's a really cool leadership point too. Oh, hey, funny enough, actually something like that just happened in my work this week. I wonder if I could apply that knowledge, right? And so, I started to come back on a regular basis, and that's exactly what it ended up becoming, right? I mean, we almost need to rename it, which would be blasphemy, but the leadership principle book, because that's really what it is. I mean, it's not about F3. It's not about, these are basic leadership principles that you can apply in your everyday life and everything you do. And I do that. Like, I have applied these principles with how I raise my children, with how I am as a husband. I use these principles on resumes, if I do interviews within my company for promotions. These are just everyday principles that you can apply in every part of your life. It is not an F3 based model. And so what is awesome about what I think, T-Claps to Gopher in the current leadership team, Plainfield and Bluegill, and the other guys are on that team, like, for taking this and run with it. But they've taken a bit of the GTE concept, which I love, which is like, all right, we're gonna teach you the concepts, and then we're gonna apply pressure to you in a physical environment and make you react to these concepts of leadership. And then, it all starts to build and become more of a knowledge base. And that's what's really cool about what they've done. And so that's a little bit of my journey. And I'm guessing maybe a lot of other guys' journeys where there's maybe some pushback in terms of like, I don't need to read another book. But then you find out that these are everyday leadership principles that you can apply in your life and that make a lot of sense. And it's just why I have a ton of passion around it. But I'll flip it over to Gopher, and maybe he talk a little bit about the evolution of, where we started as a region and how we got to where we are. So, go ahead, Gopher, if you want to kind of go through that.
Yeah. So, in terms of like the iteration for Q source for me, right? So this is like Q source. I'm assuming most regions do this. It's a rinse and repeat, right? And Dilly and I and others that have been doing this for a couple of years, we're joking around about this at the beginning of the year, where it's like, okay, so here we are. It's January. What are we going to do? We're going to start Q source all over again. That's what we're going to do, right? Like that's our leadership principles. That's tied to F3, and so we're going to continue to do this. What are we going to do next year? We're going to do the same thing, right? And the hope is that we're going to pull people into the fold every single year, and it's going to elicit different conversations, and that's really been our experience here on at least my third iteration through Q source. So when I joined, I guess in terms of just like the attraction for me, well, number one, I saw the quality of the men that were attending our Q sources. And so for me, it was like, these are guys I respected. And I'm like, these aren't dumb people. Okay. So let me give this a chance. Right. And when I did, very similar experiences as Dilly. So, where we started in terms of Q source was very rudimentary, right? We would designate a queue for that week. We would, hey, this is this week's chapter. Basically, show up is what it amounted to. Okay, and where we started was we sat there and we read the chapter, and after doing that for I don't know, probably about 10 weeks, Dilly, we're kind of looking around, going, okay, we're smart guys. We can read this ahead of time. And that's just going to maximize how much time we have in terms of having a dialogue, right? And sharing our experiences around this. And so that was kind of the first like significant evolution for us is, okay, let's prepare for this, right? And then that preparation went from just reading the chapter to, hey, listen to the podcast. Hey, here are some other thought-provoking questions, in addition to the Socratic, okay, that, the Q who's putting together the pre-blast would put on there. And I would say Dilly does a great job of that, of not just, the Socratic, but some things that are going on in his life and teeing up some questions for the packs for them to be prepared to answer those questions when they arrive. So those are some of the things that I guess just initially, in terms of other ways that we've used to bring people into the fold, other than just kind of that EHing concept as part of workouts. Hey, we're done with a workout. You come in to join us at Q Source. Is some of the competitions that we have. Dilly was on the first LT and came up with reindeer games that we run in November and December timeframe, and we give points, fake points, man. Right? It works every single time. So we give fake points for people to show up to Q Source, right? And we'll get for what this is all about is it's super, super helpful. But we reached a point, in terms of, the growth of our region. You guys probably aren't familiar with F3 playing field, but we are very vertical in our region. Our most northern AO and southern AO is about 25 miles from each other. So you can imagine, okay, I'm going to a workout in the south. Can I really get up north, go to a Q Source and then come back down south? So shout out to one of our packs, Squidward. He approached me last summer and said, hey, I really see a need for a Q Source down south here. I have an idea. So not just location to make it more accessible, but let's do an evening one. And so even if we have some people up in the north that can't go at after the workout, at 6 o'clock, maybe in the evening they can travel down to the south and participate, and we've seen that. Squidward at the time, I think he was maybe 4 months in F3, right? I mean, this is the guy who you referenced drank the Kool-Aid. Squidward was definitely a guy who drank and he was all in, man, right? He wanted to be part of everything, but he just couldn't make it up north, right? So he saw that need and came to us, and we said, free to lead, brother. And he took it and he ran with it, and that's been very successful. I guess we have currently we have 3 Q source group meetings per week in our region. So we meet Wednesdays at 6 o'clock in the morning after a workout. We meet Wednesdays in the evening, Thursdays in the morning after workout, and Fridays in the morning after workout. And that's in our furthest east AO. So we're given lots of opportunities, right? Trying to eliminate those barriers for PAX to be able to attend Q Source. And then also giving more people opportunities to lead, right? So every single one of those, Q and giving more and more PAX that opportunity to lead.
So one of the great things about the Q source is anybody can step in at any time. And we've probably all learned the lesson of, I'll just show up to the first one. I'll get the book. I'll read the chapter. I'll discuss it the next time. But I hear this thing about the WoW. What does WoW stand for? What does that mean? And Dilly, I'll let you take this one so we can give Gopher a breath and have a sip of water. But what is the WoW, and what does that stand for? What does it mean? What does that mean for the leadership development of the region? So I'll toss it to you on that one.
Yeah. So as Gopher talked about our evolution, so we expanded from 1 Q source to 3 Q source opportunities, and we were starting to get more guys, but there's always we can do more, right? Like, how do we get to reach more people? And it was really, Gopher and our current leadership team that came up with the idea. Well, why don't, if guys can't make it to the Q source, let's take the Q source to them, right? They're coming to the workouts. And so that was the next evolution, is how do we do that? And so, Gopher, again, T-claps to him. He created a team we call, the WOW team or whatever. And the WOW stands for the workout of the week. And we literally take the Q source chapter for that week, and somebody from the WOW team, we have an Excel doc where guys go in and they sign up. So our ask of anybody who wants to be part of the WOW team is to commit to at least leading, building 3 of these workouts on an annual basis. And so, your responsibility is, if you sign up for that week, you build a workout that you can give to another pack. So again, the cool thing here is I'm not building it and I'm not leading it. I'm responsible for building it. Whoever signed up to Q that day at that certain AO, they are going to lead the workout that I built. And so every Monday, we have it at a location in the northernmost part of our region. And on Tuesday, we have it towards the southernmost part of our region. So there's 2 opportunities, opposite parts of the region, but every Monday and every Tuesday at those 2 particular AOs, people know when they show up, they're going to be there for the WOW, which is the workout of the week, focused on the Q source topic of that week. The pre-blast that comes out, again, it's a normal pre-blast. It just has, the Q source stuff built in there, right? Hey, today we're going to be talking about the Jester. So I'll give a little bit of example of the one that I built most recently, which was around the Jester. So I posted the pre-blast, I built the workout. The guys who were leading Monday and Tuesday used kind of a generic pre-blast that I built for them, and then they put their little own spin on it when they posted, the official pre-blast. So what I did is I took the chapter, went and reread it, studied it, pulled out some concepts that I really liked, and built a focused workout around it. And so one thing I'll pivot to before I talk about kind of how I set up the workout is what's great about this is you may have guys say, I've done the Q source for a couple of years. This is like, I know this, right? Like, I don't need to do this. So obviously this is great for new guys because you're giving a bunch of people exposure. But for guys that have been doing Q source for a long time, like me, this is great because it's making me like truly study the chapter, because I'm having to pull concepts out to apply to a workout. So I'm going back and rereading and reading and reading. And so my mind is soaking up and I'm becoming an expert in these leadership principles. And so I built one around the gestures. So, you know, again, the way we like to do it is like to give the packs a little bit of freedom. We're like, hey, Warmerama, you choose what you want to do. Mary, you choose what you want to do. Here's your 35 minutes, you know, in the middle of what you're going to do. So for those 35 minutes, the way I built the Jester is I built it as like a 5-station beatdown. Each of the stations was built on the one of the lies that the Jester tells us. You know, if you read the Q source, you know, the Jester tells us 5 lies. So at each station, I had built a set of 11s. And so we would go to, as a group, we would go to a station together, and we'd get to that station, and the guy who was cueing the workout, he would read the lie of the Jester. So for example, you know, you're not that bad of a guy, right? So, you know, and then the cue would ask the packs in the group, who in this group, you know, looks down on others thinking, I might do some bad stuff, but I'm not as bad as that guy right there, right? Like, who does that? And you'd probably get a couple guys raise their hand, or maybe just one guy that raised his hand. Well, if you were the guy that raised his hand, you had to take off running while the group spent 5 minutes doing 11. So you're out there running. The cool part, though, that I incorporated was if it was just one guy that raised his hand, I would ask for a volunteer to run with him, so he didn't run alone. And then, so at the end of the workout, you know, as we got back and I delivered the COT, you know, I asked, does anybody know why I didn't let the guy run by himself, right? And it was the whole concept of shield lock, right? You should never try and take on your Jesters alone, like, right? You need men to be around you to help you manage and, you know, work through those Jesters. And so, you know, that was one of the things I was trying to drive home, was find an accountability group to help you manage your Jesters. So, I mean, that's just, you know, one concept. Guys have done, you know, pearls on a string, you know, for like language, like you stop and you explain a piece of language and you do extra, you know what I mean? The concepts of the, you know, are similar in terms of structure. So 11s, pearls on a string, Doras. I mean, you can use all the basic principles of an F3 beatdown, and then just incorporate the concepts into the workout. And that's essentially, you know, what we've done. And then, you know, the guy who signed up to lead the workout, again, the only responsibility on him is, obviously, you have to study the workout. If you have questions, reach out to the person who built it. And you got to build a Warmerama and a Mary. And then we do ask, you know, if you're signing up, like, you know, be willing to share, you know, something in COT, how maybe that Q source topic affects you, right? So you put your personal touch on it, you know, as you're closing out that workout, as leading the workout. So again, what's great about it is new guy, we're getting the concept to more new guys. And for guys that are veterans, you're requiring them to study deep into the materials to really be able to build the workout. And so that is what the workout of the week is. Again, we do it 2 times a week. Everybody knows when it is. People know when they sign up for workouts at that AO, they're going to be delivered a beatdown. And then there's this small WoW team that in the back end is building these workouts together. So that's really the concept of what we build.
So this is what I love, going back to my lame music analogy, is like, I'm a kid of punk rock. Like, I grew up on punk. And the idea of take back the power and damn the authority and don't tell me what to do, let me figure it out, and I'm going to F it up all the way. And at the end of it, I'm going to be way smarter than the people who told me I would never be smart, right? So that's what I love about F3, is that punk rock nature that stems from the complete opposite in theory, but not in practice. The complete opposite is regimented, this, that, and the other, and will always guarantee. But the fallacy is that that's not true, right? And the beauty of what was put out there in Free to Lead and now has transitioned into the thoughts of Q Source is that there's always an open opportunity for somebody else to make it better. Otherwise, leadership would not be evolutionary, it would be revolutionary. And we know, those who have really deep dived into Q Source, know that leadership will always be evolutionary. We learn and stand atop the shoulders of the giants who put us where we are, right? So I think of the kid, and I've used this analogy before, but I think of the kid in science class who has heard about gravity, right? What we're talking about today is Q source and how to implement it in different ways. There are people listening who believe in Q source, and there are people listening that know Q source. And there's a vast difference between believing and knowing. You can believe in science. You can believe that gravity is a thing. You can believe in the A you're going to get because you answer all the questions right. And then comes the day you trip and bust your six and land face first on the pavement. And then all of a sudden, holy cow, I know gravity, right? And so you guys have put into practice a way that men can transition from believing Q source into knowing Q source. When somebody looks at me and says, you're not alone, using an F3 name, Butt Fumble is going to run with you because you're not alone. And in this group, you will never be alone because our call is to pick up the six. And one day you're going to be assigned to the next you to run with, right? Because that guy can't be alone either. I can't say enough about just that one simple, quote unquote, simple example, because it's so much not simple, because it's all the things that we get wrong as Goo Nation. But in F3 Nation, we don't get it wrong. And sometimes we have to transition or be forced to move from believing in F3 to knowing F3. And so what you guys are doing is great. So Gopher, I'm going to pose this question to you as we kind of land the plane, because there's a ton for all the guys listening to digest. Why is the WoW concept, the workout of the week, grounded in Q source, stuff worth trying?
Yeah, so I mean the whole inception of the idea. I wanted to throw this out there because always look for an opportunity to make things better. And the inception of the Q Source WoWs, this was actually at a Halloween party thrown by one of my F3 brothers' bedpan. So with some libations, right? And we're sitting around and go, I don't know how we got on the topic, right? But it's like, how can we continue to grow Q Source? And like, because this, I mean, it's such a powerful thing. And said, man, we got to get this into the first F. Like, how do we get it in the first F? And it's all about just trying to get more exposure to the packs, right? And F3 Plainfield is blowing up right now, man. I mean, we've had so many FNGs in the last 6 to 9 months that, I mean, to the point that was made earlier, people hear Q Source and it's like, oh man, that sounds really cultish, and like, I'm not comfortable with that. And I think we're a lot, and so it's an opportunity, I think, to more just bridge that gap and let people know, just like Dilly said, man, these are fundamental leadership principles. This is not, the F3 version of the Bible. And I think that's kind of the connotation that it gets at times. And to your point, these are not revolutionary topics. These are evolutionary, right? I mean, the foundation of these leadership principles goes back thousands of years. Okay, so we're not necessarily rewriting the book. We're maybe just kind of sorting it in a little bit different manner and presenting it in a different manner. So back to your original question, right? Why is it worth it? I think number one is the exposure. If you have a growing region, trying to break that, maybe initial view that PAX would have as we're talking about Q Source and it potentially being a cult. I think that first and foremost. Dilly, feel free to chime in here, but the best way to learn something is to teach it. right? And that week you are going to become a subject matter expert of that chapter, right? Because you're going to dissect it 25 different ways. You're going to build these workouts to come up with a really great product. I'm very proud of the product that we've been able to produce on a week in, week out basis. And then it's given other packs an opportunity. One of the actually kind of the cool things is we didn't really go out and broadcast super widely that these dates were going to be WoW workouts. And we've had several packs kind of unintentionally sign up for these. And then we pull them in, we go, oh, did you know that you signed up for a WoW workout? They're like, no, we didn't. Okay, well, let's talk about this. Here's what you're going to do. And so that's kind of been a cool thing that I don't think we anticipated is some people who didn't have exposure to Q Source, all of a sudden they're leading a workout about Q Source. So that's been pretty fun. I don't know, Dilly, what else do you got?
Yeah, I would say, why it's worth trying. I talked a little bit about, the passion for the Q Source, but I think, right, you go back to the most essential thing in F3, right? And that's our mission. And it's to invigorate male community leadership. And this is an opportunity to invigorate more male community leadership, because I think a lot of times we get blinders on and we think about invigorating community leadership through our first F, our fitness, right? Like guys come in, they learn, they step up, lead their first workout, and they go from there, right? But listen, leading fitness is not everybody's D2X, right? It gets them a leadership opportunity, but it's not their D2X. You might have guys in your region that their D2X is like teaching and educating and schooling and things like that. Well, what a great opportunity to give them a book and have them learn it and teach it through something like a WoW workout, right? If you go to one of the principles in the Q Source, we call it the leadership development process, right? And it's schooling, apprenticeship, opportunity, and failure. And this is that process all in the WoW workout, right? Somebody learns the book through schooling, and they're like, hey, I want to participate in these WoW workouts. Like, okay, well, watch Dilly or Gopher. They're going to build a workout and then go experience it. Okay, cool. I've apprenticed. Well, now I want to sign up and lead a workout. All right, now I've been given the opportunity. And the other cool thing that we do in the failure piece is like, these never go perfect. So we got, our separate Slack channel. People are like, hey, this didn't work. Like, this was not good. Like, you need to redo that. So then the guys leading on Tuesday can adjust, right? So it's a bit of that schooling, apprenticeship, opportunity, and failure. And it's so another opportunity to accelerate that male community leadership, just not through the fitness piece, through more of an educational piece. And so it's just another reason why it's worth trying. And it's just continue to help us accelerate in this region. I think it can continue to help accelerate new regions, existing regions, super regions, whatever you want to call yourself. I think it can be beneficial to anybody.
So you guys have covered a lot of great information, a lot of good material. Let's go ahead and wrap it up real quick with, can guys around the nation find some of these workouts of the week that you guys have pulled together where you've incorporated some of the Q Source principles? How can a guy who's never done this, they've done a book study of Q Source, but they want to try something different, how can they learn? Is there anything tangible they can look at and take with them to their next Q Source workout?
Yeah, 100%. The nice thing is, we didn't do this intentionally, but for some reason we got 1 week ahead of the nation in terms of the Q Source weekly schedule. So we're already a week out ahead of everybody, and we've Gopher's done a nice job creating a repository where we have all these WoW workouts on Google Docs, so we can share the Google Docs with you guys, and guys can go in there and see them. Right? I mean, we already have next week's workout built.
Interject here?
Yeah, go ahead, Gopher.
Yeah, so we're actually working with Uno right now. He's got the Q Source newsletter, email. I don't know what exactly he calls it, but so we've been talking with him, and I think the intention, hopefully I'm not misspeaking, is we will be providing a link. Yeah, well, if he wasn't thinking about it, I guess he's committed now. I don't know, but putting a link basically to the Google Sheets that we've been creating that basically details the workout. And as Dilly said, we started week 1 with chapter 1. So we're actually 1 week ahead of the nation. So we got 2 weeks two opportunities to test run the workout, and then basically incorporate all that AAR and then give it to Uno, and he can supply the link to the rest of the nation.
So here's the deal, and you're correct. I'm lucky to serve on an SLT with Uno. So like guilty by association. There's a ton, and my hope is this, and we talked about it before we hit the record button. We're not here to promote ideas to the guys who are 10, 11 plus years. We're here to learn from their experiences, and more so learn from their failures in true F3 fashion, because through failure is how we learn the best. That's the sticky knowledge. So normally what I would do is say, hey, IJ, what brilliant knowledge do you have? What thoughts do you have? I'm going to cut him off because he's too damn handsome and too damn smart. So just follow Italian Job on Twitter for this week's motivation to run through brick walls. For the love of whatever you believe in, be good or be good at it. Aye?
Thank you, man.
All right.